This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am joined once again by the wonderful Jill Bucaro, who is joining us from Wellness Riot in Los Angeles. How are you today, Jill?
I'm excellent. How are you, Jamie?
Fantastic, fantastic. Today, we're going to speak about a meal that's apparently the most important meal of the day, breakfast. Is it the most important meal of the day?
Oh, such a good question, because we've heard that forever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most important meal of the day. I think it's one of those things that depends, which is like not an answer most people want to hear,
Right.
but I don't know that it is the most important for everybody. And I don't know that nobody should eat it, right? So I think it's somewhere in the middle. And I think maybe more importantly than like when you eat it is, what are you eating? So we eat breakfast, some people do intermittent fasting and they're like, oh, I don't eat till noon. But then they're going through a drive-through, right? Or like fast food or something processed. And it's like, well, I don't know what the benefits are then of doing that if you're going to break your fast with something, that's processed and, full of chemicals and salt and sugar and fried and all that kind of stuff. So, so I think it really what it boils down to is like, how do you feel when you eat breakfast? How do you feel when you don't eat breakfast?
I've heard many a time that it's so important for children to eat breakfast because it helps with their learning and their brain development and the like when they're at school. And that's a very important thing for kids, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, so there's a couple things. One is that kids tend to sleep longer than adults and they tend to not eat as late as we do, right? So I know for most kids, my kid included, especially when he was younger, it was like, we start wrapping things up like right after dinner, so it's like the bath and it's story time or it's homework, whatever the age is, age appropriate. And then they're in bed. So they've already fasted for usually well over 12 hours. So it makes sense that, they would want to have something in their stomachs, to go to school. But that's the other thing too, is like, if they didn't go to school, would they need to eat at 7 o'clock in the morning? Maybe not, right? But there's not another chance for a lot of kids to eat until noon, and that's too long. So it does make sense for them to go with a little fuel, first of all, because they've had this big window before fasting, and then also because it's going to be a long time before they're able to have something, and they don't want to be distracted by hunger, right? Because that's the last thing kids need in school is to be distracted by something else. And then again, I think it depends on what they're eating, just like adults, if we're sending them to school on sugary cereal or pastries or, Pop-Tarts or whatever, then I don't know if that's helping. Most kids tend to get a little scattered and kind of like, their energy is going to fluctuate a lot. And kids on sugar tend to lose focus, not, stay focused. So that's going to be, an issue for them, and the teacher. So it's that time and what are they eating? I think that's really, more important.
You mentioned cereal. Cereal is it's something that I definitely grew up on for sure, but I was never, unless we were on vacation on holiday, we were never allowed to have any of the sweeter cereals. So I grew up on Bran Buds, Bran Flakes, Rice Krispies, and cornflakes for the most part. So not high sugar cereals for sure. One thing I've never managed to stomach, and despite the fact I'm from Scotland, is porridge or oatmeal. I just can't do it. But what are your thoughts on cereal? In Seinfeld, they enjoyed cereals a great deal, didn't they? But tell me about your thoughts on cereal.
So I personally love cereal, and I was the same as you. We grew up on like the non-sugary cereals. For most people, what I find is that a breakfast that's higher in protein and healthy fats tends to be the best option. It tends to keep them fuller, longer, and it tends to give them not those energy crashes in the afternoon or even like mid-morning. So although I love cereal, I don't recommend it for breakfast for most people. And again, you'd have to see, if you have cereal and then, the 3 days a week you have cereal, those are the days that you want to take a nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Or those are the days that you can't even get to lunch because you're starving. That might indicate that's not the best, meal for you. Because it tends to be carbohydrate heavy, and even if it's not sugar, it's it's pretty processed, even the non-sugar ones, it's corn, it's wheat, it's, rice, whatever. So that tends to, unless you're going to have it with something with like a nut butter or like a side of avocado or something, maybe with some protein, a standalone breakfast, it's not typically the best. For me personally, and like the more clients I see, the more people I talk to, those refined carbohydrates tend to be what dips our energy.
I see.
So you kind of have to see. But if that works for you for like a lunch, I wouldn't have cereal alone almost ever. Like it needs to be with something else because, and it's funny when you think about all the other breakfast foods that like are typical, right? It's pancakes, waffles, toast, bagels, like all carbohydrates. And that is what doesn't usually do well for most people. So it's like, no wonder most of us are falling asleep in our chairs at the office or like, struggling in school or, want to crash at 2:00. It's a lot of times we have to go back to breakfast and kind of see how we're setting ourselves up for the day.
You sent me a picture of one of your ideal breakfasts, and I haven't opened it yet. And I'm curious as to what goes in. Oh my. Yeah, I can see that now. I'm not even quite sure what that is. So you're going to have to take me through. This is one of your ideal breakfasts, right?
Yes. Okay. So I gave you 3 ideal breakfasts, and they're all versions of the same thing. So for me, it's a veggie scramble. I happen to make mine with tofu because I'm plant-based. Yep. This could easily be with eggs. And so this gives me the protein and the veggies and hardly any carbohydrates. And then I'll do it with something like avocado or whatever for those healthy fats. But then I'll just do it. So I do basic with the scramble with like whatever veggies I have, broccoli, cauliflower, onions, carrots, potatoes, greens. And then I'll mix and match like the dressings or the toppings. So I'll do it Italian and I'll have giardiniera on it, and I'll do Greek and I'll do like some dill and some like, feta. And so I just kind of mix it up like that. But that for me, it's satisfying. I make it through to lunch, no problem. And my energy doesn't crash. Like I have energy all the way until I go to bed. Fantastic. So for me, that's what, and then I just dress it up, like I said, depending on like what I have in the fridge to make it fancy.
So this is a regular breakfast for you. This is the ideal breakfast.
Almost every morning.
Excellent. Well, I've sent you 3 pictures. They're not of my regular breakfast by any means, but if you wouldn't mind opening the first picture, it's one of my favorite types of breakfast. And I may have to explain what these things are, because I was thinking you may not have even seen some of these components previously. So
yes. Okay. So I'm opening the one with eggs, beans, sausage. It looks like a tomato, mushrooms.
Yeah. And the things that you may not be able to identify in there are black pudding, which is blood sausage.
Okay.
You have haggis, which is all the bits they can't legally put into pies. That's not true. That's not true. It is, well, some places it is. And also a curiosity from Scotland called Lorne sausage, which is that kind of rectangular looking. There are 2 pieces.
In the middle?
Yeah, then that's like a pork beef, normally pork, square sausage. And then you have a banger, which I guess is a pork sausage. And then just to the right, you have a thing called a potato scone, which is a very typical, this is a full Scottish breakfast here.
Okay.
Now, I obviously probably wouldn't be around today if I were eating this every single morning. But I'd like your take on this, on the full Scottish breakfast, because I thought maybe she's never seen anything like that before.
I have seen maybe some iterations of this along the way. So what I will say, so let me start with, there's protein and there's healthy and there's protein. I would say, and then with the egg, there is some healthy fat there with the yolk. The beans are protein also. So what I would ask or what I would question is like, it's huge. So is that something you would eat? I mean, like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 kinds of meat in there. Is that right?
This would be quite typical after a big night out. One would then go to, this was quite a good one. This one, really enjoyed this a few years ago. And I would probably eat all of that. Maybe perhaps having skipped a big dinner the night before. Yeah, I could eat that. I mean, that I mean, if you just from a caloric count, that's pretty high, right?
I would say it looks, I'm assessing it. It looks a little high.
Yeah.
But I mean, beans are fine. Eggs are fine. The vegetables are fine. Even a, potato, and even a protein, like an animal protein, what I think could differentiate it would be like the quality of the meat, right? So we have like, you can do a grass fed and a pasture raised, and then you can do, more processed, which like the sausages and like the bacons and things like that tend to be more processed. So they tend to have like things like, those nitrates and nitrites in them. And the preservatives. So that tends to be what the issue is. It's not that it's a sausage. It's not that it's, a piece of like animal protein. And also with these kinds of breakfast meats too, you tend to cook them in a lot of oil, right? They're
The
either
preparation.
deep fried or, on a griddle. So it's those kinds of things that are added in that tend to, kind of tip the scale in favor of, like healthy or unhealthy.
Just so you understand, I never normally eat this amount of meat on any one morning. This is an anomaly. I mean, I remember this breakfast because I loved it. I would say it's my ideal breakfast, but I would never eat that every day. The final picture is simply me, man, this is about 10 years ago, enjoying a full Scottish breakfast. I was very, very happy about this one that arrived on my... there you go, similar kind of thing, not quite as extravagant as the last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the same, although it does look more moderate like than the first plate. Yes. I mean, as far as like just the amount, but I mean, I also think a variety of things on the plate is almost always a good idea, and I would just say, if you could add, like, if you could put this like on greens, like sauteed greens, or like I see the tomato there, like something where you can like kind of up the veggies. We're not very good at having veggies for breakfast, but you can sneak them in like in an egg scramble, or what I mean, like wilted greens on the side of your sausage and eggs and things like that.
I mean, I quite often my breakfast consists of yogurt, fruit, and some kind of fiber in there, and that does keep me going. I don't find I have any, I mean, I never tend to suffer from those crashes during the day. Now, when it comes to, we're not going to speak about tea and coffee here, but what about things like juices and smoothies and the like?
So between juices and smoothies, I always lean towards smoothies, right? Because you get the fiber of the vegetables in there. And, there can be benefits to juicing if you don't absorb nutrients well, or you need to get a lot of nutrients in and you have a compromised digestive system. Juicing can be helpful because you don't have to break it down. They're just there, but you're missing the fiber. So smoothies are definitely a better option there because you're blending up the whole fruit or the whole vegetables. Where people tend to go wrong with smoothies or off is that they make them all fruit or fruit and yogurt. And it really needs to be a balance of veggies in there, because that, you think about if you make a smoothie with, a cup of blueberries and half a cup of strawberries and a banana and all this stuff, like, would you really eat that in 15 minutes? Like when we're downing a smoothie with nothing else, most people wouldn't do that. And so it tends to, or it can have the impact of like really raising your blood sugar. And again, a crash if you're, having it all fruit. So, you can put a crazy amount of greens like spinach or Swiss chard in a smoothie without changing the taste at all. I mean, it's really quite astonishing how much spinach you could put in a smoothie. And if it has banana or like some nut butter, something like that, something with that heavy fat, you'll taste the fruits and, the peanut butter and things like that. You won't taste the greens, but it's so much better to level out your energy when you build your smoothie like that. Okay. And the other thing about smoothies too, is that you don't want to drink them in like 4 minutes. Like you want to have it like, if it's your meal, how long would it take you to eat breakfast? Maybe like, 20 minutes.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah.
That's how long you want it to last, because again, like you're just shoving like a lot of food, into your body in a short amount of time, which is kind of unnatural. We wouldn't eat that way. So if you think about it that way, smoothies can be great.
What is your preferred beverage at breakfast time?
So I have switched to decaf coffee because I truly love the taste of coffee, but I was trying to cut back on my caffeine. So I went to decaf. I like tea, but for me, it's no substitute for coffee. Like it's just, I can't drink tea thinking I'm substituting for coffee. I like tea in a different way. So I am decaf coffee with almond milk.
Okay, well, a topic for another day. Jill, thank you so much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today. I should have fun editing that one, and we'll catch up again next month. Bye for now.
Sounds good. Thanks.